Jakarta to our correspondent there, Jack Hewson. Jack, what's the very latest you're hearing on that crash and indeed the rescue operation from that wreckage?
Well, as you mentioned in that report just there are divers now at the scene and the crash site has been established. The footage that's been released by the National Disaster Management Agency shows a kind of slick over the water, presumably from jet fuel, which has left there, including also lots of bits of debris, including clothing, cell phones, ID cards, documentation from the passengers. There's every indication that the plane hit the water at very high speed, and it would seem it's unlikely that there will be any survivors. What we know about what happened to the plane, the flight in the early stages of its flight, it rose to 1,500 meters and then lost altitude before rising briefly again. It then appeared to just fall out of the sky, essentially about 13 minutes into its flight after leaving Jakarta. Excuse me. The pilot requested a return to the airport shortly before the crash. So that would suggest perhaps there was some sort of mechanical error or something in that regard, but we really don't know. And what's also more confusing in that regard is that the plane was brand new. It had only been in service for 2 months. So it's very difficult to assess what could have gone wrong with such a brand new plane. But obviously, investigators are at the beginning of that journey to find out.
Meanwhile, Jack, give us a broader idea of what is Indonesia's aviation security record, notably more about this airline carrier Lion Air, which I believe is quite sizable there and relatively new.
Well, yes, like most Indonesian airlines, Lion Air was on a blacklist of airlines that were not allowed to fly into the EU for most of the last decade. However, that blacklisting was lifted in 2016 after improvements in safety standards in general in Indonesia. However, today's incident obviously is likely to call that decision into question. Lion have had a number of incidents previously with several incidents of planes skidding off runways, the worst being well, actually, this wasn't just a plane skidding off a runway. The worst they had was in 2004 when 25 people were killed during a crash landing in Solo City. Also, notoriously, in 2013, a plane fell short of the runway in Bali, crashing into the sea there, though fortunately the water was so shallow that all of the passengers were successfully rescued without fatalities in that incident. In recent years, as I've mentioned, safety standards have improved, but obviously the events of today are going to put a question mark over their name. And if survivors aren't found from this crash, which looks likely, this will be the second worst incident in Indonesian aviation history after a Garuda Indonesia airline crash in 1997 that killed 214 people. So many questions for investigators to be answering right now.
OK, well, Jack, for now, we'll leave it there. Thanks indeed, Jack Hewson, there reporting.